Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. Forgive my wet hair this morning. I have just been very, very busy this morning, and I washed my hair like about an hour and a half ago, and I've just been running around, and then I realised the time, oh my god, I've got to get this filmed before I go to mum and dad's for lunch, and I'm like, oh screw it, I'll just have to film this with wet hair. So there we go. Before I kick off with this review, I just want to say a great big thank you. I have had so many comments about my review of The Running Grave. It's kind of been a bit overwhelming, and I've replied to I think all of them, and if you have commented and I have missed replying to you, I'm sorry. I will get back to you as soon as I can. That it's been a busy week. It's been a busy week, and I have had so many people say to me, because I did mention about doing a second video because this book was just so overwhelming, and so many people have said, please do a second video. But this week I just haven't had the time. I have been back to work because I had obviously 4 days off to read the book. I then had this whole week in work, and then tomorrow I go on holiday. So it's just been, I've been working and replying to comments and doing everything else that I need to do, like catching up on everything and then winding down in order to prepare for my holiday. And today I'm running around like crazy, making sure everything in my house is sorted, figuring out what I'm going to take on holiday with me. It's just busy day. So I am going to be sending you a second video on The Running Grave, but it will just have to wait until I am back home after my holiday. So I'm going to be back. I come back on Thursday, so either Friday, Saturday or Sunday you will get a video from me about The Running Grave, more spoiler based video. So yeah, as mentioned, I've been busy working, and I am super excited to be going to York tomorrow. I'm a bit nervous. I don't know why. But I think it's that thing that I've mentioned in previous videos. I don't know if you have seen, and if you have, I'm sorry to bore you with this explanation again. But it's where I was born, but because we moved away not long after to go overseas. I don't sound like I'm from York, or Yorkshire, shall I say, but I am. So I have this like deep connection, but I've never been there since. Never been there. So I just don't have this connection to this place. So I'm going to go, obviously, do touristy things and all that lot, but at the same time it's kind of like I'm not finding myself, but going, wow, this is where I'm from, taking it all in. And my childhood best friend, who found me on Facebook about 6 years ago, lives there. So I'm going to be meeting up with her, and we're going to be having dinner at the Guy Fawkes Inn. I'm so super excited. So yeah, so I'm excited, but I'm also a bit nervous, and we'll just see what happens. But anyway, enough about the chaos of my life and all that which is going on. I'm here to talk about the book I've been reading this week, which is Confident Women by Tori Telfer. Now, Tori Telfer is a writer who I came across because I stumbled across her first book. This is her second book, and as far as I know, she hasn't published a third one. I forgot to check that before I filmed this because, like I said, I've been running around doing 1.5 million things. But I stumbled across her book Lady Killers, which I reviewed on this channel. If I remember to, when I upload this, I will include the links to that in the description. And I was blown away by her book. I absolutely loved her approach to it and such. And I came across her podcast called Criminal Broads. That's Broads, BROADS. So about female criminalists, criminals, not criminalists. And I loved her style and such. And she writes her books very much like she writes the scripts for her podcast. They are so well written, put together, tell really complex stories in such a succinct manner. I just absolutely love Tori Telfer. I think she's a brilliant writer. She doesn't do the podcast anymore. She's hosted multiple, but the thing with Criminal Broads is that if you do listen to the entire thing from beginning to end, there are a couple of times where she says, look, I've got to step away because of work stuff, and she became a mother during the course of the podcast as well, so she took time off for raising her son and such. So she has, you know, come back and forth to it. So I still subscribe in the hope that someday it will come back. It may never come back, I don't know, but I absolutely love that podcast. And I unfortunately use an app called Castbox to be able to listen to it. But the other podcasts, I believe that well, at least at the time when I searched for it, her other podcasts aren't available, I don't think, through that. So I haven't listened to her other podcasts. But if you are able to look any of them up, please do. I very much recommend Criminal Broads, and I'm sure her other podcasts are great too. So, as I said, this is her second book, and I adored her first book, which specifically looked at female murderers or female serial killers, and asked the question, why is it that we always focus at the male counterparts when we look at serial killers? We always think of like Jack the Ripper and Ted Bundy and such as this, but there are female killers who have done just as bad or have done much worse who we don't think about. We don't have that immediate association in our brain. And why is that? And she looks at multiple serial killers throughout the course of history from all around the world, just as she does in her podcast Criminal Broads, and poses that question. Why is this person being forgotten from history? Why don't we talk about her? Why don't we remember her? And there were some really fascinating profiles in there. Some of them I already knew, some of them I had absolutely no idea. So when it came to her second one, Confident Women, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into because I'd read her first book and because I'd listened to her podcast, which I absolutely loved. So I was like, hell yeah, this is, after The Running Grave, this was the palate cleanser that I really needed. And my God, it was absolutely perfect to get me reading another book after having such a crazy book hangover from The Running Grave, with a storyteller who I love, and I knew would deliver, and damn, she delivered. So Confident Women, this is a little different. Instead of looking at murderers, she was looking at con artists, people who took opportunities, or women, shall I say, who took opportunities. And the question this time is, why is it that female serial killers again then, female con artists, we end up rooting for them? We want to see, we love their glamour, their outfits, the furs, the cars, the extravagance, the champagne, the parties. We get drawn to it like a moth to a flame. So why is that? And what she does is that she splits this book into multiple categories, and each category has multiple women that she profiles. There is also, each category has an introduction with some smaller examples where she only refers to of women, where she only refers to them by their first name. So, for example, the tragedians section, which is people who have conned, or female, should I say, who have conned based on tragedy. And she said, okay, let's take an example. Let's look at Ashley. Ashley used the 7/7 London bombings to swindle a load of money out of insurance, or Heather, who used the 9/11 terrorist attacks to claim that her nephew had died in the towers and set up GoFundMe page to swindle money out of people for a fake funeral, that kind of thing. And then she goes, right, you understand what I'm talking about? Here are 3 women who took that kind of formula, and I've done a full life profile on them. So that's, even though it's like 3 women per section, you are actually getting more women because of those shorter examples. And I have to say, I loved this book. It was so riveting from the beginning. I love the fact, just as she did in her first book, all of her cases were from all around the world. They covered women of all different ages, from all different time periods. And I really love the fact that she very distinctly looked at different techniques. And what I mean by that is people who used the media, people who just simply told lies upon lies upon lies and just, blagged their way into places and then worked their way up further from there. And then people who used technology to their advantage, as I said, like using like GoFundMe and such as that, to be able, using the internet to scam people. And I have to say, the section that I found really particularly interesting was about spiritualism, spiritualists, and searching for ghosts and all that lot. And there's a whole section, the introduction section as well. Oh no, I was just about to say, what I was about to say, the introduction section I really liked was actually for another part. It was to do, no, it might be this part actually. Yes, I think it was this part, because it was the ghost hunters. Yeah, was all about people who claim to be Anastasia, the Romanov youngest daughter, not the youngest child, but the youngest daughter, the Tsar's family, who were all massacred, and people who came forward claiming to be Anastasia many years later. And that was very interesting. And also looked at a couple of sisters who, I've forgotten their names, I am so sorry, but in New York, how they teased their mother into believing that there was a ghost in the house, and that they could communicate with it by bouncing an apple against a wall and such, and the thud that it made, a quiet thud, was ghost communication and such, and how that spiraled out of control into establishing a whole industry in the Victorian era of spiritualism. It's incredible when you find out all of these, sources, how things originated. And Tori Telfer, just as always, tells these stories so perfectly. And I have to say, I've always loved, and I will always continue to love, her beginnings and ends of people's profiles or episodes of her podcast, because she always begins it with something, in this case, because we're talking about the lavish lifestyles of these con artists and scammers, and then obviously we go back to the beginning of their life and go all the way through. So it begins with this very luxurious thing, and then she calls back to it at the end, and you see how it's so interesting how now we've reached the dark end of the story, what that light beginning means. It takes a whole nother level of complexity and sadness and such. I love the way how she does a full circle in all of her profiles. It's absolutely brilliant. What I also love about Tori Telfer is that she finds things fascinating. She finds the humor, she finds all of these different elements, but one clear thing is that she doesn't judge her people from history who she's profiling, those who she's picked to be in the book. She very much treats them as people, and she goes, look, in some cases this is someone who just decided on a whim to do this, or in other cases, like one at the very beginning was a woman who from very early childhood, society turned on her and her family and were very horrible. So she wanted to get her revenge, and she did some things. So there are the reasons for the cons, for the scams and everything, really varied from woman to woman throughout the course of this book. And it's just, I love how she is, for when it came to, like, especially that one where there was a lot of stuff going on in their childhood, which then reflected why they did this in their adulthood. She was very gentle when talking about those particular childhood traumas and such. Tori is never one to make you suffer as a reader, but she will tell you things that you have to know in order to understand where this person's life went. So she's not going to be, so for example, if a person was abused, she may talk about how they were physically abused, or should say they were verbally or emotionally abused, but she won't go to the degree of saying what those physical things were or what those things were said to them. She has a limit. So I really like Tori doing that. She wants you to understand the gist of everything, but she's not going to go into the really bad detail, because it's not respectful to her subject, and it's also not respectful to the reader. So I really, really respect her for doing that. As mentioned, she is somebody who clearly loves to explore so many different things, and you can see that reflected, as I said, all different times, all different levels of societies, all different countries, all different ages. She just looks far and wide, and there were many cases in this book that I had never heard of. Some of them I knew because from her podcast, because I had heard a few of these cases before, but only a few. I just want to make it clear. So it wasn't like I was going, oh, this case, I already know that from her podcast. No, it was just, a few, because as her podcast went on, she started looking into various other things, and she talks about she's starting to research her second book. So this is why I think she was, because she was researching these, she went, oh, perhaps people might be interested in this for the podcast. So she had done a few and published them on her podcast. So, but literally it was only a few. And I'm thinking about it now, I think because the point where I was listening to Criminal Broads when I was reading Lady Killers, I think now I've probably heard more cases that are in that first book than the second one. Yeah, definitely. Because she actually introduces the first episode saying how she published her first book and it had gone down well, so she's doing this podcast. So yeah, I'm sure she wanted to then do various episodes on the people in the first book. But at the time when I did my review, I hadn't listened to all those episodes yet. So yeah, I think there's far more from the first book that are profiled on her Criminally Broads podcast than in the second. So there we are. Overall, I thought this was a brilliant read. I found myself smiling throughout, which sounds very weird when you're talking about scammers and con artists, and some of them did lead to some horrific stuff happening. But I think like I said, I just needed the perfect palate cleanser, and this was it for me after The Running Grave. It was just wonderful to read. It is just as with her first book, it is so well paced and so well constructed. I love it. I love Tori Telfer's writing. It is wonderful. If you just want to escape for a bit, and just to make it just so that you can understand, I think this one's the longest. Yeah. So Oh no, the Fabulous is where the Anastasias are. Sorry, not the Ghost Hunters bit. But each section, it starts. It tells you what the introduction bit is about, and then the 3 names of our profiles and what you can expect to find in here. And I think this is the longest section, actually. Yes, it is. And that is the longest section, and that is covering 3 profiles and an introduction. So as you can see, you know, it's a lot. Oh no, or is the Drifters? I think the Drifters might the Drifters might be ever so slightly thicker, ever so slightly. But yeah, so that's covering 3 profiles and an introduction. So they're not long at all. So you can very easily just pick up her book and just read a profile as a chapter and then just move on to the next one. So it's not like it's a book where we're doing deep analysis and such, more to be more of an academic thing. This is just a really wonderfully put together true crime book that is covering criminals from our history, female criminals from our history, who we may have forgotten even existed or didn't even know existed. But there's something so intriguing about these particular women, these con artists and scammers, that we are drawn to them like a moth to the flame. And she's asking the question, why do we root for them? Why do we want to stare at them? It was just absolutely wonderful read, and I loved every second of it. I just, yeah, I can't boost her enough to say this is an absolute brilliant book. I absolutely love Tori Telfer. I think she is a brilliant writer. So I think I'm going to end there because I can't gush anymore about saying how brilliant Tori Telfer is before boring you, or I hope you aren't bored already by hearing me say that. But yeah, it was just the perfect book for me, fell on the perfect week, and I just, chef's kiss, I absolutely loved it. So my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yes, in a heartbeat. I've read Lady Killers a few times now. I've listened to her entire Criminal Broads podcast, I think 3 times now. I absolutely love her work. I think she's brilliant. Would I read any more of her books? Well, if she writes any more books, I will be there in a heartbeat to get hold of a copy. Absolutely love it. Would I recommend this to anyone? Absolutely. If you are interested in true crime, or in particular female true crime, go for it. This book will not disappoint, as I would highly recommend her first book, Lady Killers. So it's my thoughts on Confident Women by Tori Telfer. Have you read this book? Let us know what you think. Leave comments in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to you, let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which I'm going to be taking to York with me tomorrow. I can't believe it's tomorrow. And that is Triflers Need Not Apply by Camilla Bruce. This is a fictionalized account of a female serial killer, Belle Guinness, from the Victorian era. So yeah, I'm very excited to start this on the train to York, and yeah, I will let you know what I think of it when I am done. And as mentioned, I will be doing another video for the Running Grave, more spoilery, when I get back from holiday. All right, guys, bye.